Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
So, are we ready?
We're ready.
Preliminary total, $52,842.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
That was yesterday's preliminary total after our 1-for-1 holiday food drive with Commerce Bank. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all day and contributing. We know we have a very generous Mid-Missouri community, but you always continue to surprise me and shock me with your generosity. We will have Lindsey Lopez from the food bank here at 8:50 with an updated total for the food drive. And we are just, it's hard to believe, 11 days away from Christmas. We know,
oh man,
and we talked to Lindsey before, we know that folks have needs all throughout the year, and she reminds us of that. But especially around Christmas, it's nice to be generous and be able to give back. So thank you all. You can check out, I think that's still posted on our website. If you missed the food drive yesterday and still want to contribute, we would encourage you to do that. We've also got Raven Harrison here at 7:10, and we've got Casey Muckler with DHSS here about the 988 mental health line, which apparently Missouri is leading. Is it 988, Hannah?
yeah, it's 988.
And Missouri's leading the charge with calls into that line. They've done a really good job of promoting it, and so we'll get an update from her. We've also got an update on the Mizzou football schedule, which we will get into here for next year shortly.
Well, and another sports team from Mizzou kind of has some big news this week.
That's the hockey team, right?
Yeah.
They bumped up to Division II.
They did.
It's so fun. I recently, a couple weeks ago, went to a hockey game in Jefferson City there at Washington Park. It was everything you would want from a sporting event, and especially because it's at Washington Park, you get to sit so close, but you still got the music and all that good action from a good hockey game. So I would encourage you to check out their schedule. It's always really fun. We are getting some updates. Let's go ahead and go to the Mizzou football schedule real quick. We got an update.
Yeah.
We have next year's schedule. I've got Mark Ellinger here in studio. And actually, both Mark, if you've got the video on, you can see us on YouTube. We did not plan this. But both of us, Mark and Brian, have their Mizzou stuff on. This is very well done, you all. Thank you for helping me
They
out
matched
here.
on purpose, right, John?
We didn't even wear the same color. We actually came with black and gold.
Exactly.
All right, so what's the breakdown from yesterday?
Mark, what sticks out to you? Is my mic on there?
Yes, your mic's on.
Okay, very good. To me, what sticks out is there's two things. Number one, you open with 4 home games, then the bye week. That sets up really these are not easy teams. These are, certainly not Alabama or anything like that, but these are not easy teams. Then you go to A&M on the 5th of October.
Not the friendliest of confines.
No, and they're definitely going to try to retool after what happened this past couple seasons. Auburn for homecoming, and then going to Alabama before Oklahoma comes to town. It's a challenging schedule, but there's 2 byes, which we've had those over the years. People think it's every year. It's not. But we've had them from time to time. This past season there was only 1 bye for teams.
Yeah,
but that's
the
what
2 byes is fluke of the schedule. It's just the way the calendar lies, and it's relatively rare. It has to lay out just exactly perfectly to get 2 byes. I think this things that stepped out to me. I mean, obviously the Alabama game is really, really tough, and depending on how we do this season and who comes back, which seems like most of the guys are going to come back, that could be an actual marquee type of national matchup.
Yes.
That a lot of people will be watching. I was actually surprised. I don't think the schedule's as challenging as I had anticipated it might be. Obviously we don't have to play Georgia, which is kind of, good and bad. I think it's developed into a pretty good game. Unfortunately, we tend to not come out on the right end of that, but this is a different way to perhaps prevail. We lose Kentucky, which has developed into a really bitter rivalry between Missouri and Kentucky, and that's kind of a sad thing. But, picking up teams like Mississippi State, Auburn doesn't seem to be all that great. A&M, who knows what we'll get with them.
How did we end up playing UMass this coming year?
That's a paycheck game.
Yeah, and
I guess, except for it's at UMass, which is bizarre.
It's really odd. And Boston College is coming back here after a home. It's basically a home and home from a couple years ago. I think you bring up a very good point, Mark, about that. It's this, because you don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it does look like a favorable schedule, and that Alabama game could be huge. I think the Oklahoma game is very intriguing.
There you go.
I really do.
At Mizzou.
Yeah. And a lot of history there. We all remember Billy Sims came to town here in '79. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. Everybody talks about the 2010 game, when Mizzou beat them, they were number one.
When John McGahn kicked off, ran back the initial kickoff of the game for a touchdown, and it went great from there on.
Well, and speaking of the Heisman, anybody have any strong opinions on where Mizzou's Cody Schrader ended up in the Heisman rankings? Did anybody see that?
Yeah.
I think he was eighth, wasn't he? Yeah.
Eighth. That's pretty awesome.
I don't know. A lot of folks thinking he kind of got snubbed a little bit by that placing.
I thought, I thought he should have been higher up there too. It's just they only usually invite the Final Four to New York, but his numbers were pretty good. I do think he should have won the Doak Walker Award. That Ollie Gordon, no offense to him, but he did it against Big 12 running backs and didn't do much against Texas in that Big 12 championship game. But I thought that was interesting. Oklahoma brings a lot of tradition, and they will bring a lot of fans here as well. I definitely remember Brian Bosworth. Remember him? I mean, geez, he was a huge name.
They're going to find it's hard. I think Oklahoma and Texas are in for a rude awakening. Mm-hmm. Football in the SEC, we learned that when we came in 2012. It's a very different schedule.
Yes.
You don't have any gimmies. Every team is big and strong and fast, and the pass defense can actually stop the pass, and the running attack is a downhill running attack. And I think these teams that come in, particularly from the Big 12, which I think plays a soft defense, really, I think they're in for an adventure. And it's not the one game. I mean, Texas beat Alabama one game. The Big 12 can always,
on too.
The Big 12 can always beat somebody in one game if it works out right. It's the grind of going through the schedule and getting pounded on every single week.
Yeah.
And having to come back and get pounded on the next week.
How many years has Mizzou played Oklahoma like that? That's one of their opponents from back in the early days.
Yeah,
like 100+ years ago.
Well, the last,
Does that go back to the old Missouri Valley? The original Missouri Valley?
I believe so. And certainly it would have been the Big 8 and then the Big 12. Yeah. But in terms of the last time, I'm going from memory, it'd be 2011, the last time they would have played them. Because when they were in the old Big 12.
Well, and it's rare, I think, that football really intersects with politics. But Mark, someone Attorney General Ashley Moody yesterday went ahead and launched an antitrust investigation. Now, she does admit to being a lifelong FSU fan, right? But she said basically...
she's a Florida grad.
Oh, really?
She went to Florida as opposed to Florida State, which I thought was ironic.
Well, they are, Floridians are not happy about the pick, and she said, we've got to launch an investigation. That's kind of strange, right?
Yeah, kind of like a collusion investigation.
That's
weird.
I
have a simple solution for Florida State. Join the SEC.
There you go. Go Noles.
All right. Well, we did get an update yesterday. They voted, and they're officially launching an impeachment inquiry into Hunter Biden. Of course, we've got a lot of statements about the relationship with Joe and Hunter. Maybe.
Have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I don't discuss business with my son. I did my job. I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine because I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters, and I've never discussed them. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses.
I like the ominous music playing in the background. It really does make it sound like the walls are closing in on Hunter Biden.
Again.
But how long have we been talking about this?
Too long.
All the way back to the laptop for sure, which would have been, 2019, 2020, I guess, 2020?
You think yesterday changes anything, Mark?
No.
Why not?
They're going to do an investigation. It's going to be like all the other impeachment investigations, a lot of partisan stuff. I guess my commentary on the House Republicans' impeachment effort, and I saw, James Comer will no longer go on Fox and Friends in the morning because he doesn't like Steve Doocy, because he's asked hard questions. I guess the one question I would say is we keep reading about all these things where they say, well, look at all this evidence we found. Put all the evidence out publicly. Show. It's pretty simple. Show some actual documentary evidence that Biden got money from the Chinese or Biden got money from the Ukrainians. And,
Joe Biden, do you think
Joe
we
Biden,
have to...
he'll get impeached. The problem we've got is there's two transactions that they've come up with, both of which are really small dollar amounts, and they were supposedly paybacks of loans. Now, that seems a little stupid, but if you owe somebody money and you're tight on cash and suddenly you get a bunch of cash, that is kind of the way you pay off your debts, is when you have a bunch of cash, you pay them off.
But even if Biden didn't take the actual cash, if Hunter Biden is taking the cash and then Joe Biden is saying, yeah, give my son the cash, I'll fire the prosecutor or put pressure on them to fire. I mean, that's still bad.
So where's the evidence of that?
Yeah, prove it.
I mean, that's all it is if there's an email out there where Joe Biden
For
said,
the big guy or something, right? There's a text message.
But that's the other way. If there's an email where Joe Biden says, I'm going to call the Ukrainians and tell them to fire the prosecutor if they pay Hunter a bunch of money, that's the smoking gun. We got a lot of inference. We got a lot of innuendo. This is the problem I think we've got developed with impeachments. What we've impeached, the last 3 presidents have been impeached. There was attempts to impeach Obama. There were attempts to impeach George W. Bush. There were, obviously, Clinton was impeached. We're not going to remove a president unless it's something egregiously horribly bad, or whether, one party gets such a huge dominant control of the Senate to do a removal. So it's become just politics. It's not become actually governance anymore. And the impeachment process was supposed to be about governance.
And do you think it has any bearing on the 2024 election?
Not a bit.
Really?
None.
I think people...
If anything, it'll help Biden.
It'll help Biden?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, we've seen the same effect with Trump. The harder they try to go after him, it seems like the better he does in the polls.
And unless they come up with the actual evidence, the smoking gun, so to speak, a lot of people in the middle will say, this is just more examples of how they just beaten up on somebody for political gain, and there's no value to it. It turns people off.
Well, and there might be some precedent for this because we have seen transparency under the new speaker. He released all of the J6 stuff, which they had been fighting for. I think our friends from Judicial Watch had been wanting for months and months, and he finally said, yeah, let him have it all. And so, maybe this Congress would say, hey, let's put some of this stuff out.
I mean, that's the solution. Dump all the documents. Let people like John Marsh and Brian Hauswirth dig through that stuff. People who are actually going to look through it and say, look what I found, as opposed to James Comer or any of the other Congress people going, well, we've seen all sorts of secret stuff. We're not going to talk about it, but we've seen it.
But wait a minute, Mark. So are you on Hunter Biden's side? Because he actually did show up yesterday. He did not appear, pursuant to the subpoena, but he did have his own. Oh, there he is on TV. Yikes. He's a scary looking dude. He shows up and has his own press conference, and he even they've even tweaked the relationship a little bit more because now his dad wasn't involved financially with his businesses. They were he was very careful to put that word in there. But he showed up. I think Comer and everyone else had said, we're going to hold him in contempt. But his thing was, look, I'll testify as long as it's public, as long as it's all out in the open. I don't want to do a closed door deposition.
Well, he doesn't want to do a deposition. I mean, that's the difference.
And would we get anything anyway? I mean,
from a deposition, probably.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, you have lawyers asking questions with documents. You don't have the grandstanding from the very, you've watched a congressional hearing. It's 5 minutes of I got to give my speech, followed by a question that gets to nothing, followed by your time has expired, and now it's time for the next person to give a speech.
Oh, come on. I mean, I think some university presidents might have something to say about getting to nothing. that one went a little bit differently.
Hey, didn't affect the Harvard
have the last name of Biden, he'd be in prison already. Everybody knows that.
Is Senator Josh Hawley talking to Laura Ingraham, getting us into the daily DC rundown. Do you believe that, Mark? It is selective justice.
Absolutely, it's selective justice. At least it's selective outrage if it's not selective justice. How about that?
That's fair. Well, speaking of selective justice, President Trump has a lot of ongoing legal battles, but based on what the Supreme Court said that they were going to take a couple of cases yesterday. We think this is basically the last regularly scheduled announcement of what they plan to hear this term. But actually, one of the cases that they said they might hear or that they're going to hear could affect President Trump's one of his cases, right?
Well, I think there's actually two cases that the court is looking at.
Yes.
One of them is actually Trump's case. It's actually it's the question of whether official immunity applies or not, which couldn't apply to anyone else. And that's the reason that currently the J6 trial is on pause, because technically the Supreme Court has that case. They could remand it. They could address the question of official immunity, yay or nay. They could send it back to the Court of Appeals. I think it's the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. In which case there would be further delay and would have a significant impact on the timing of his trial.
So the Trump campaign yesterday said the judge's decision to pause the case is a big win for President Trump, but it's really the first win because everything under Judge Chutkan has been a nay for Trump. I mean, they've lost everything. She reinstated the gag order. Now, this doesn't affect the gag order. It's still there. We don't really know how long this is going to take. But this is the first even hint, this pause by the judge, that's a positive for Trump, right?
I mean, be careful what you consider a positive. I mean, the Supreme Court may come down. Frankly, I think they will not say there's official immunity for what he did and probably send it back for trial. There's another case that got taken, and it's from somebody who was convicted of a January 6th crime.
This is Joseph Fisher.
Yep.
He was charged with assaulting a police officer, disorderly conduct in the Capitol, and obstruction of a congressional proceeding.
And it's the last one it's a broad catch-all that has been used by the federal prosecutors against most of the people in the January 6th trials.
300 of them.
And it's a real key component of Jack Smith's indictment against Trump on the January 6th trial.
recently, sometimes I see a news story and I just have to think to myself, is this real? Am I being punked? Is this made up?
Double check and make sure you're not on the Babylon Bee.
I try, but sometimes the things are just getting to be so outrageous and unbelievable that I have to double check my sources. And Mark, you told me about this yesterday, and I thought,
You didn't actually believe me when I first said it.
I said, I've got to see it in writing. And there actually is an official email. You can see a picture of this email that the Boston mayor sent out, or I guess her staff member sent out accidentally. Now, she has a different way of celebrating Christmas than most of us, I think. And she's taking some heat for it. Mark, what did she decide to do?
She is having a Christmas party.
How nice of her.
For electeds of color.
Okay.
And they sent an invitation out to the entire Boston City Council, of whom 6 are of color and 7 of whom are white. And then 15 minutes later sent out an invitation, rejection or recall, whatever you would call it, saying, to all 7 of you that are white, you're not invited.
Oopsie.
We're going to be racist here. We're only going to allow people of color to come to this party. I mean, you talk about just blatant racism. Of course, this is the same city that has Harvard, that has a Black American graduation separate that white folks aren't allowed to walk across the stage on.
Well, and many people in Boston are saying this is our problem, right? We live in a divided community, and as the mayor, you're further dividing us. Why would you do this?
And here's the ultimate irony of it. Her husband is white.
Oh.
So the question is she going without her husband or not?
There you go.
That would be so weird if they followed it up and like significant others are only invited if. And then you think about and I like to play kind of the game of opposites. You think about what would the outrage be if a city council sent something out and said, this is a white party only.
They burned City Hall to the ground.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, in today, and I go back and forth. There are some organizations that I'm a part of that are like women's organizations, and they will have like Christmas gatherings. But Mark, you're uninvited all year long, not just at Christmas. So does that make it better? I mean, are you anti like a women's law Christmas party?
I guess my question would be, why would you say you're intentionally going to segregate? I mean, kind of the whole concept we were supposed to try to get to in this country was Martin Luther King's comment of, I judge people by the content of the character, not by the color of their skin, or I guess by what chromosome they're born with. And I mean, here we are. We have now divided our nation into a point where all we see is what little segments we are. We don't even talk about being Americans anymore.
Yeah, we love labels.
Yeah, we have to be Black Americans or Hispanic Americans or gay Americans, or why can't we just be Americans? I think the name / before America we should just ban, because that's the division. We should just all be the same.
Well, they've got the group in Boston that's called the Elected Officials of Color, and that we're behind approaching the mayor on this whole concept for their holiday get together. It just seems kind of divisive, I guess.
It's just consummate racism. I mean, that's what it is. You said it exactly right, Steph. If you say it the other way around, everybody would say it's racist.
Clearly racist. Well, and I think, too, it's the exclusion. And I think, I was talking to a friend in really large businesses, right? And a lot of times when you're in these huge companies, they will have kind of interest groups as part of their company culture. And so maybe they have a group of women that meet. Maybe they have a group of, international folks who are, part of the company who kind of meet and talk and, just aligned interests. And I know the person I was talking to said, there's a pride group, right? And mentioned they're all having all these Christmas parties all the time, right? And gatherings of those interest groups that meet all year round. That's not just a party. But the point of the thing was, she said, hey, I'm going to go to the Pride one. And I know this person is not a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm thinking, well, why are you going to that one? But they were having the interest parties, but they weren't exclusive. If you wanted to go, you could go. And of course, these are the same communities who always want you to be an ally, right? And so, but then what if you are an ally of Black elected officials and supportive? You're still uninvited?
Uninvited. Don't show up. If you want to ask people about what it's like to be, as you say, quote, an ally, ask about American Jewish people and about their allies in the liberation movements.
And to me, it's made even worse by the fact that they were invited and then uninvited. I think it would have been slightly better if they just weren't invited in the first place.
I was thinking about that. Have you ever been uninvited and been like really excited to go to something and someone's like, "Ooh, I accidentally invited you"? I don't.
I can't. I don't think I've ever.
I'm sure I have accidentally been invited to things, but nobody ever went back on it.
And I'm thinking the other way. Like, I've forgotten to invite people that I should. That's also bad. But having to uninvite people or even recall an email, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, I did that just yesterday. Actually, wasn't anything bad, but just emailed the wrong person and had to be like, "Oh, haha, just kidding, sorry."
Well, the mayor or her staff emailed the wrong people.
Oh, so you were kidding when you sent me that email. Okay.
You're officially uninvited, John. Sorry.
Well, look at the Harvard University president showing up at the menorah lighting for the Chabad organization and all with all her anti-Semitic, comments she's been spouting.
Well, just remember
Damage control.
The board of Harvard has unanimously said they support her.
Yep.
And everything she says.
I can't believe it. Now, the other two presidents are gone? Or
no, only
just
the
one?
president of Penn.
Yeah.
Yep, Liz McGill, and the president of their board of governors or whatever it's called also resigned.
Well, and I think maybe university presidents are on people's mind now, and they're like, oh, we got to look at these university presidents, because I've seen 2 pieces recently here locally about university presidents, and they're almost written like hit pieces, like, can you believe? So the Missouri, I think someone called it the Missouri Never Independent or Not Independent, had a story about Moon Choi, and can you believe how much money he's being paid? Oh my goodness, it's an outrage. And I'm thinking, can you believe having that guy's job? I mean, that is some serious stuff. Now he actually has the role of two folks. And so the university, there's all this back and forth in the article about, well, actually we're saving money because we condensed 2 roles and he's doing the work of 2 people. And the pay, like, compared to what we're paying our football coaches
or basketball,
it seems kind of like he's getting pennies and he's in charge of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the university's been successful since he's taken over. I mean, think about, he took over in 5-6 years ago, maybe something like that. Mm-hmm. And, think about how bad things were under the prior when you had the 2015 issues on campus. And, we haven't had winning football for a long time. We suddenly have winning football. People are excited.
And an SEC Coach of the Year.
Yeah. I mean, I think they've done a good job. And don't you want to reward people who are doing a good job?
Well, and it was cool. Like, when I was on Mizzou's campus, you would just happen to run into Moon Choi all the time. And I always thought that was kind of cool, and I don't know if it's unique necessarily, but it's cool to run into, the head honcho while you're walking to class.
And the other thing that I think is neat, just as a sports fan, is he's genuinely excited about sports. It's pretty funny. I mean, it's not like he's this academic who's like, oh, yeah, I have to tolerate the sports because of my academic credentials. He's genuinely excited about it. Oh, yeah,
he's really into. Matter of fact, the last time we were at CC's, we saw Moon Choi and Coach Drink having dinner together there.
Well, I agree with you, Mark. I think if you're doing a good job, you should get rewarded. The article says that the curators keep Moon Choi's salary increases under the radar, like something like dark money, something bad is going on here. But then they do, the article does point out other folks' base salary at other big universities, and he's actually, right in line or a little bit less than that. And yeah, he's gotten salary increases over the last several years because the university is doing really well. I think, he could point to a whole host of things, especially things during COVID, I think he's doing a fantastic job. And I think anybody, whether or not they're keeping it under the radar or not, obviously they have all the information in this article, so it's not that far under the radar. But I was kind of shocked to see this.
And, unlike some universities where you've seen a lot of problems where they've overspent and not had the revenues, I mean, look at the next gen medical building that they've built, the Women's Children's Hospital. They're investing not just in the pure academics or sports, they're investing in things that have huge impact in the community and the state.
Yeah, all this that's done with the reactor.
Maybe we should call Moon Choi because, John, you remember Scott Fawn when he was hanging out with us the other day? He was trying to get us Cotton Bowl tickets from Moon Choi.
That's right.
Maybe we need to call him this morning and check in and say, hey, what's the status on those there?
Well, and the other article I saw was ABC 17 had an article up about the Columbia College president or the former president, and they recently had some layoffs and said, hey, they were experiencing all these financial losses, but at the same time they were paying the former president. And I'm pretty sure that was a part of his like severance and compensation agreement. I'm like, yeah, let's just stop paying him and then get sued. That'll be less expensive, right?
Yeah, what's the old line we hear about, Mark? Deferred compensation, which means a whole lot of bucks that's not included in the base salary. For
yeah, although I think this had to do with the separation agreement. I'm not sure this was like, I earned it in the past and you still have to pay it out. I think this is these are payments to say goodbye.
I think I think that.
I'll go, yeah.
And I think you're right, Mark, but at the same time, to criticize what's happening currently based on, whenever this agreement occurred and them still like upholding the obligations that they had, I'm not sure there's anything they can do once they, signed that agreement. So to say like, well, they shouldn't be, paying him, that's kind of water under the bridge at this point.
And it's a private college, isn't it?
I believe
it's not public, so it's no different than a private business.
But I think people are critical because, they were having to lay people off. And you never want to do that. But at the same time, universities are facing a lot of the same pressures that everyone else is. I just think maybe this congressional hearing maybe has kind of like made people heightened. Their senses are heightened about university presidents. But I really think there's, not a lot here.
You're not going to see the Missouri Independent go after anybody for talking about, Hamas or any of that stuff. That's the non-Republican news organizations over there, and as a result, they pick on these other things.
Yeah, well, they need to pick on somebody besides Moon Choi, in my opinion. All right.
Agreed.
Coming up next, Pinterest has all of the 2024 predictions, and Mark and Hannah, I've talked to both of you separately about this, and you guys, I think, have something to say about Pinterest. You disagree I think they're on.
We're lame-os.
I think they're right on.
I think this is just fake
trend for 2024. I am here to tell you.
I'm not even caught up with what was on trend in 2023.
Hannah, you're still stuck. Like you're way before your time. You're just a grandma.
I am. I came out of the womb with the soul of an old lady.
Well, you're in luck because Pinterest is saying eclectic grandpa is actually going to be like the style.
Oh, good.
Oh, boy.
What is that supposed to mean? I'm in luck.
You are in luck. Grandpa core or something is like the new thing. But Pinterest is coming out with a trends report. They do say they've been accurate about 80% success rate for the last 4 years in a row. And I think this is really interesting because if you've been on Pinterest, you can like pin different pictures, but a lot of it is about fashion and shopping and that kind of thing. And what they're tracking is what are people searching for? And that kind of gives you an indication of what they might be interested in. And I think even more importantly, we talk about political polls and the raw numbers aren't really that great. What you find out more is where the trend is going. And that's what Pinterest is monitoring. So they're saying, for instance, one of the trends they say is make it big. And they said chunky hoops is up 45%. Big braid hairstyles search is up 30%. Wavy perm for men, 50%. I will never get that hairstyle. Someone recently...
Back to the 80s.
That's what, John, that's what I'm saying. All of these, I feel like we're just flashing back. This whole wavy perm thing for like teenagers, they have that hair, and I heard someone describe it as like broccoli, and now I will never unsee that in that like their head looks like the shape of broccoli. They've got this skinny little head and then this like poofy, permy hair.
What's truly unfortunate is members of my generation think that they're being cool and original when they start all these trends, and it's just the same repeated trends that have been around.
Yeah, remember a few years ago, bell bottoms were really popular. They had come back from the 70s.
I feel like
and
they're
it was
still
like
popular.
it was like a big deal. Hey, look at these cool new pants, bell bottoms, and everybody who's older is like, yeah,
hip huggers.
Come on, this is nothing new.
I thought this exact thing when they said the latest thing is going to be knockout workouts. They said the ultimate 2024 stress reliever is punching the air. And that people have been Googling this like shadow boxing workout, and it made me
so embarrassing.
Oh, I was all into this. Do you know who this is?
Yes. All right. Hope you guys are home ready to get down too. We're gonna start first with a nice warm up, and then we're gonna start with a little stretch and get right into the.
That's Billy Blanks from Tai Bo. I used to do those workouts on VHS.
Never heard of it.
And that was like, oh, come on, you never did Tai Bo?
Never heard of Billy Blanks for sure.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It was really popular when
who's an old lady?
Well,
yeah,
exactly. I think I'm splitting the difference here, but I was thinking the same thing. It's like air kickboxing. We've been doing that forever. How is that a trend?
I will give Pinterest credit for one. How about this?
Okay.
Rest stops.
Okay, what's that mean?
That's like instead of going on vacation and run, it's like how to go on vacation and maybe like be a little more laid back and rest and get some sleep.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
Hannah is down with the napping for sure.
Well, a couple years ago, my now husband's family, we went on a beach vacation, and at the end of the trip, my in-laws were asking all of the kids, what was your favorite part about the trip, as parents do. And most of us said that it was nice to not have it super scheduled out and just have several days to, if we wanted to go play on the beach, we could do that. We could swim in the pool. We could take a nap. It was nice to just relax.
I don't know.
So I will say, as a Gen Xer, the nice thing about looking through this is it's by and large Gen Xers are not involved in any of these Pinterest things. There's only one or two of them. So I think this is pretty much a y'all thing. It's a millennials and a Gen Z thing. This is not for Gen X. Once again, proof our generation's the
There's
best
a lot of throwback stuff in there.
There really is. And I want to say that I was ahead of the trend for this one. And so you guys are going to think that I'm joining the Pinterest trend, but I've been doing this for a while now. They said bow stacking.
You have. I will vouch for you.
I have a bow earring. I've been wearing the bows in my hair. I've been doing it for a while, and now I'm kind of sad because Pinterest has said it's going to be a trend for 2024, so I'm going to have to, come up with something else.
Well,
I'm sad about it.
The one category I can get behind is this. They're calling it inch stones instead of milestones, and it's basically
This is very Gen Z.
Yeah, it's basically finding small things to celebrate. The specific example that they gave is with your baby, a first tooth. Let's, make a cupcake that looks cute to celebrate. Celebrating the little things in life. And I think that's
sounds
cute.
like giving kids participation trophies, even when they
Okay.
finished last in the Little League bracket.
I'm with you on that, John. Or it kind of sounds like having birthday parties for your pets.
Well, yeah. What's wrong with that?
I'm not a pet girl, you know.
Dogs
that.
are people too.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Good morning. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Stephanie Bell, and I am joined by Mark Ellinger. I hope you all, good morning. I hope you all feel the same way I do. I know I've been out for a couple of days, and I miss it when you're off your schedule and you don't do your normal morning routine. So thanks for everyone who's checking in on the texter. I'm glad to be back this morning. Tomorrow, we will have Trey Fauché in co-hosting. I will be here as well. And I know we will have Jeremy Cady in from Americans for Prosperity talking about their legislative priorities. I know they've picked a candidate in the presidential race. I wonder, I want to get an update from him about what they're planning on doing here in as far as the state campaigns in 2024. And we've gotten some recent announcements that we have yet to get to this morning. But right now, we really need to get to Raven Harrison, who we talk to every week, the conservative warrior. And I was thinking about you, Raven, yesterday when I saw Hunter Biden standing on the Capitol steps. I'm like, ooh, Raven is going to have some words about this. What do you make of Hunter Biden's statement yesterday?
Oh, man. So people asked me to describe it in one word, and I said stupid, crack-addicted, tax cheat, alidocious cheat. It was ridiculous. It was nonsense. It was pitiful, and exactly theater. What was even more disappointing, Stephanie, is to have a sitting congressman in there while he evaded a subpoena. So he went up and made that speech, tried to dictate to Congress the terms of his statement, and then left in contempt of Congress. And, Congress adjourned with absolutely zero repercussions. It is so predictable theater.
What do you want to see from Congress next? I mean, they said they're going to hold him in contempt. Mark had suggested today that they should let all of the records out regarding Hunter Biden. If there really is evidence, they should make those public. What do you want to see?
I want to see that as well, but the American people want to see the two-tier justice system destroyed. We need to see the laws being applied equally to both sides. This has become a train wreck. This has become Democrats steamrolling and Republicans just rolling over and letting them. So that's what was happening. Our government is not functioning, and it's going to require we the people to get in there and go, guys, we're going to be on you every day until you follow through. We are supposed to be talking about single bills. We have really big problems right now. So the fact that they even took us through this Hunter Biden political charade is pitiful. Does anybody know that Zelensky just bought a $20 million mansion in Vero Beach, Florida yesterday with our tax money?
Well, talking about government dysfunction, Raven, I mean, the border continues to be just a nightmare. And then you just raised Ukraine. I guess, is there going to be some kind of grand bargain that's done where Ukraine gets money to fight the Russians, and in return, maybe we actually do some fix of the border?
No. What you're looking at right now is, remember, we had fought for one of the things that McCarthy was ousted for was we needed single bills coming up, not these multiple-page monstrosities that nobody has time to read. Asked for single-issue bills. And now what we've got is $886 billion marked for these special projects, which includes, I believe, I can't remember what the earmark was, but a substantial, I think $168 million, if I saw the numbers correctly, continuing to go to Ukraine. I didn't see anything earmarked for Israel, and I didn't see anything earmarked for our border. So they've got our border wide open. I mean, Joe Biden on one frame says, you know what, we're going to continue to build the wall. And on the other one, he has the Homeland Security cutting the barbed wire so people can walk through it.
Now, I see on your Twitter you also took issue with the Boston mayor, and we were talking about that earlier this morning. When Mark told me about it, I actually thought it was made up, and I thought I have to go check his sources on this because why would anyone do that?
Thank you.
What are your thoughts? I mean, it's just incredible.
I can't believe, and to have Democrats embracing this segregation. So for those who don't know, the mayor is having some kind of Christmas party that excludes whites. Whites are not allowed into this Christmas party. This is, we fought against this in the 60s of this kind of racism and intolerance, and they're supposed to be the party of inclusion. And yet, how do you advertise with state funds a function where white people are not allowed? I mean, I cannot believe this is the America that we live in right now.
We are talking with Raven Harrison. You can find her at ravenharrison.com. She's also on Twitter, which you can get to from that website.
Raven, what do you think of all the anti-Semitic protests that we're seeing on major college campuses and a lot of the presidents, if nothing else, being complicit in those protests?
What you're seeing is really disappointing. You know, I am the daughter of 2 retired Air Force colonels. We've lived in communism. We lived in some of these third world countries, and people don't realize how good they have it. Nobody would realize how much their voice means until they get to a place where they can't have it, and it's being given away. So all these protests, it's just a big wake-up call of what we've allowed to fester in this country. We're wondering why the young people, you know, why we can't communicate with them, because how are they going to fight for a country if we don't teach them how to love it or to love themselves? We've got so many areas of fracture here, but it is unreal to me how they just don't understand what they are giving away. Freedom lost once is freedom lost forever. So we cannot be tolerating under the guise of acceptance. We also need to clarify the line between rights and entitlement. We're hearing a lot of, well, people have the right to protest. Well, Americans have the right to protest in America. That's what makes it America. But we're also now extending these rights to people who have illegally jumped our border. They don't get rights. They don't get benefits. There's no other country that you can break into and be rewarded with free health care, education, money, cell phones. But that's what we're doing.
It's hard to watch. Well, I am looking at this new poll out this morning. They're saying that few adults would be satisfied with a Biden-Trump rematch. They actually they quoted somebody from Monette, Missouri, and he said, probably, this is Randy Johnson, probably the best way to put it is, I find it sad for our country that this is our best choice. We're down to the lesser of two evils. And later they say of Republicans, 58% would be very or somewhat dissatisfied with Trump as the GOP pick. I know you are not in that 58%, but for these folks, you know, I worry that these folks who are dissatisfied with the overall choice will either not show up or, you know, throw their vote away. For those folks, how do you convince them, hey, Trump is the right pick here?
What I tell them is we don't make this about personalities. We make this about how the government functions. So, and this was the plan by the Democrats to make him so unfavorable by constant news coverage. So if you look at statistically, 93% of the coverage that President Trump got when he was president was negative. That means it was 24/7 bashing, a narrative being pushed. But is that reflective of what really happened? Is that reflective of the best economy we ever had, the lowest unemployment, a secure border? It is not. And remember, many of these people, the majority of the people who are bashing President Trump now were all about him, you know, before they couldn't control him. So now all of a sudden, you know, these people always wanted his endorsements, his help, his money. Donald Trump was everywhere. Didn't Obama say the dream, the American dream was to be Donald Trump? Obama said that when he was running. And then when they realized that he wasn't going to go along to get along, they couldn't buy him. That's when they tried to break him. So that's what I tell people to remember. Focus on the kitchen table issues. Do not let them distract you with the squirrel of the world is on fire. We don't have time for social issues. We're going to lose our country if we don't get serious and focus on what really matters. And he has proven he can do the job.
Raven, all right, make a prediction here. We're 1 month and 1 day from the Iowa caucus.
Wow.
How about that? It's January 15th. Who wins the Iowa caucus and by what percentage?
Well, President Trump is going to be the nominee. He's going to win it. I mean, Nikki Haley is surging because she's getting a lot of money, but a lot of that's coming from Democrats. Need to be very careful. So it is going to be a Trump runaway. That is my prediction. I think it's going to be at least by 30 points. The polls kind of have a large margin of error because they're ridiculous to start with, but it's going to be an interesting ride. And hopefully, like I said, you're going to see Biden pedaling out. He's not going to make it, and they know that. So they're going to have to reveal who they're planning to sub in, and I think it's Gavin Newsom.
Well, we always enjoy your predictions and talking with you every week, Raven. We're going to have to clip that audio, and when we have you on the week after the Iowa caucus, we're going to hold you to that. and see if you were right. No, I think I think you're right. I think the percentage. I would have to guess. I would think the percentage would be slightly less. Mark?
I think it's going to be very close.
Really? But you're a DeSantis stan.
But the last poll out of Iowa showed Trump up substantially. Don't get me wrong, but he's not over 50% in Iowa at the last poll. DeSantis was up now to 19%, and Nikki Haley was down at 12%. So it seems like maybe in Iowa, Nikki Haley's surge isn't going as well. She is, however, surging in New Hampshire and doing well there.
Well, we will, again, clip this audio. I'll have you all back on, and we will see who was right in Iowa. But we appreciate you, Raven. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Coming up, we are going to do What's Hot with Hannah. But before we get to that, I do need to correct something I said earlier. Casey Muckler's with Department
been the common denominator in this. No, it was actually 7:23 when Stephanie asked me what time it was, and that, I don't know what to do with all this free time, guys. Like, should we
Millie's
sing?
still brushing her teeth. She isn't even got the radio on.
Should we sing Christmas carols? Like, what? What do I do? There's so much time for activities. Okay. Earlier in the week, I put this up on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, and we just haven't had time to get to it yet. And I'm so glad that we have Stephanie and Mark back in studio.
The number of people that texted me about this.
Yes.
Because you posted this and it can't apply to you. And they're like, oh, I bet you have a good story. And I'm like, I am out of town. I didn't post that.
Truthfully, I don't even remember what sparked this idea. John might remember, but the question that I've posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page is, have your kiddos ever accidentally walked in on you and your spouse? And how did you handle it?
I'm with James, who on the Facebook said, walked in on us doing what? Wrapping gifts, Hannah? Yes. When I am trying
Watching a bowl game, of course, is what we meant.
Right.
I know Jack also said, well, yeah, they just wanted to watch Dexter with us. But no, I think most of the Wake Up fam knows what I'm talking about. So if you have any good or bad stories, I guess, of your kids walking in on you and how you handled it, you
Send them to Hannah because she wants to get an idea on how to handle them.
I don't have any good stories for this, so don't ask me.
You can text those stories to 874-9390. But I did insult one Wake Up family member, and I guess I should apologize. Marie said that she was shocked by our question and that it was very inappropriate. So,
well, we're sorry for that.
And I didn't comment back this, but I never said what the kids walked in on the parents doing. So, Marie, you kind of...
Oh, we're reeling it back in.
So it's like innuendo here.
Yeah.
Where's your mind at,
Where's that
right?
assumption song when you need it? Like Bob said, just checking for ticks.
Yeah.
All good.
Tabitha says she doesn't, like, to her knowledge, her kids have never walked in on them. But her kids have asked if the parents felt the earthquake last night.
TMI.
Yeah.
Poor Trevor says, no, I haven't had that, but I was that kid. Sorry about that, Trevor.
He's still scarred, probably.
Nancy says, my oldest did, but she was too young to know what was going on or remember. At least I hope so.
Oh, God.
Gee, wrestling just like WWE, Mom.
Oh, my goodness. Hannah.
One Wake Up family member said, it's more fun than it looks, son.
Yikes.
No, my brother and I, growing up, our parents were divorced. And so we used to always tell them kind of in jest, like, hey, we are 50% of the time at Dad's house and 50% of the time at Mom's house. You guys get that out of your system while we're not here, please, is what we used to. That was the running joke between my brother and I.
There you go.
That's fair. Like an open conversation. You were very mature for your age.
I don't know if our parents saw
appreciated
it that way,
that.
I could just picture my now adult son just laughing uncontrollably would probably been his response.
All right. Well, you got to text us if you have a good story.
874-9390. Come on, don't be shy.
Oh,
we won't even share names if you don't want us to.
Oh, yeah. People are going to want you to share names.
Since you've just been sharing names from everybody who posted on the Facebook page.
Hey, they posted on Facebook. It's like fair game. If you're going to post things on the internet, you should know that the internet is forever and that,
Yeah. What about the dog with the cold, wet nose in the wrong place in the middle of the night?
Nicholas does give some good life advice. He says the door gets locked and we don't usually practice making babies until they're asleep.
Oh, jeez.
Which is why they probably walk in on you because you think they're asleep.
Yeah, there's always that.
How did we get here, guys?
I don't know. I think
way too early on What's Hot with Hannah.
Way too early.
Yeah, it's your fault, Stephanie.
I thought you were just going to go with the seltzer story, the White Claw, folks, and I would rather talk about that. In that White Claw, who makes alcoholic seltzer, has decided and come out with a big press release, and they said, guess what? We're going to make non-alcoholic seltzer.
They're coming to that bus driver's
Yeah, the
defense.
bus driver, yeah.
And people are like, you mean LaCroix?
It's sparkling water.
No, a couple months ago, there was that bus driver who got fired because she was drinking White Claw on the job. And she claimed she didn't know that it was an alcoholic seltzer. She thought it was just sparkling water. So maybe they're helping her out.
I think And Donovan has notes for the class about our last topic. So, Hannah, the texter has kind of lit up, but if you are looking for some tips, Donovan's got your back.
Yeah. On my Facebook post from earlier this week, I asked, have your kids ever walked in on you and your spouse? You can fill in the blank on what I'm talking about. And if so, how did you handle it? Donovan says, we tell our kids we're going downstairs to do laundry, and the kids hate laundry, so the basement is our playground, and we've never been busted.
Hey, that's a hot tip. Thanks for that, Donovan. Again, you can text us at 573-874-9390 on whatever's on your mind. Some people, we are getting some texts about tonight's roll cart meeting. I loved this one from Sandy. She says, I can't believe they have to have a special meeting on how to store roll carts. Come on, people. But tonight...
that is Columbia. I mean, come on. This is like the definition of Columbia right there.
This is not confirmed, but I heard a rumor, and obviously rumors are rumors, that good old California, Missouri could potentially be going to a roll cart system.
Thank goodness.
Right? Like, I'm kind of excited about that.
You put all the stray cats in them.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I've never seen so many stray cats in my life. California has a stray cat problem.
Well, and I think at issue is, whether or not they're going to make you store them inside or something. And so we got another text from Nathan and said, I wish I could go to the meeting tonight. They can't make me put these things inside, especially if that means I can't fit my car in my garage and they're not policing the streets. And now I have to worry about my car getting broken into. So, he's saying, I wish I could get to the meeting. But if you're interested.
Everything's getting stolen except for the roll carts,
the trash.
Right?
5 to 7 p.m. tonight, though, if you are worried about roll cart storage, you need to attend that meeting. All right. So we had some big news yesterday in the world of the Supreme Court and in Trump Nation. So we have kind of one pending case and one grant, but they both kind of implicate Trump's current legal battles. Mark, what did we learn yesterday?
Well, I think the big one is the January 6th case. The special prosecutor, Jack Smith, asked the Supreme Court to rapidly and quickly address the question as to whether Trump's actions on January 6th are protected under the official immunity clause of the Constitution. In other words, that he was operating as president and therefore he can't be charged with what he does as president. The D.C. Circuit did not agree with that he was immune, but there was a pretty good dissent, I think, that came with that. It's gone to the Supreme Court. The trial judge in that case, Judge Chutkan, who has ruled against Trump on pretty much everything, has now suspended the case, entered an order saying that at the moment she doesn't have jurisdiction over the case because this issue is pending in the Supreme Court, and basically throwing the ball into the Supreme Court's court. There you go, the court's court, to say, hey, you need to answer this quickly because we have a trial date coming up. Otherwise, the trial's going to get continued, and it's going to be your fault for delaying it.
And they could potentially answer it pretty quickly. They've done so in the past in these kinds of really important cases.
Yep. And they've asked for expedited briefing on it. I mean, they could say, yes, he has immunity. That solves the problem. They could say, no, he has no immunity. That solves the problem. Or they could do the third option, which is they could send it back to the D.C. Circuit for some additional action.
Well, and I don't agree with most of what Chutkan has done, but I guess in one of her pleadings or one of her orders, she said basically, well, just because you're the president, it doesn't confer a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass. And I think that's probably right. But I think we know there is immunity in certain circumstances. Is there any indication about, when he might have immunity versus when he might not?
Well, I mean, the question is, you think about the day of January 6th. He was on the stage, but that's as a candidate. He was in the White House. And when he's in the White House, was he functioning as the president of the United States, executing the official duties? In which case, whether it's counting the votes or anything else, those are all part of the official actions of government. Therefore, the executive branch has something to do with it. You execute the laws of the country. So that would be official. But if he's acting as the candidate and he's doing things saying, hey, I want you to do X or Y because I'm a candidate and trying to stop something, then maybe that's on the other side and you don't have immunity. I think there's a lot of facts and circumstances that go into that, make it really difficult to know. Chutkan's been very hostile to this concept, but maybe the Supreme Court will actually give some people an idea where the line is.
And I know the Trump campaign was saying just the stay or the pause of the case was a huge win in Trump world yesterday. And then also this whole...
But let me ask one thing here.
It's the only win they've gotten in that case,
But
really.
that's great. So they don't try the case on, was it March 4th? I think the week before Super Tuesday was this. Mm-hmm. What if this thing winds through and instead of a March 4th trial, we're having a September trial? I don't think Trump world would like a September trial.
I think every time he goes into court, his numbers go up.
I think that if you look at independents out there, if he is actually on trial and they're putting all that evidence on, because it's going to be breathlessly covered on every news outlet in the entire world, unless his case is really, really good, it'll hurt him with independents.
Okay.
At that time.
Hot take from Mark this morning. Also, we've got this obstruction case winding its way through the courts. We've got Joseph Fisher is the guy at issue, and I guess the case also involves two other individuals. Joseph himself he says he was only briefly inside the Capitol. He was charged with assaulting a police officer, disorderly conduct, and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Now, it's that last obstruction charge that the Supreme Court said we've got to take a look at that. And I guess the D.C. Circuit, anyway, the courts have kind of wavered back and forth on this issue.
The D.C. Circuit affirmed his conviction, but there was a dissent again in that one, and the dissent said the way the government's applying it's so overly broad that it has to be unconstitutional just in the basis how broad they're applying it.
Wasn't that the guy who was a former cop who was charged with attacking Capitol Police, or I have that wrong?
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. He was charged with attacking the police officer. I just don't know if he was a former cop or not.
Yeah, I think he was a former Boston cop.
So at the lower level, it was District Judge Carl Nichols, and he said the law was enacted in the wake of the Enron collapse, and it was only intended to apply to evidence tampering that obstructs an official proceeding. Yet they've used this law to, I think 300 of the J6 folks have gotten an obstruction charge. So could have big implications not only for this Mr. Fisher, but for these other folks who have been charged with that, as well as for Trump.
And for Trump, because the underlying heart of the entire indictment against Trump for January 6th is that statute, which is interfering with official proceedings of government. It's the obstruction of governmental activity charges. It's if that turns out that what they're saying is too broad, that might actually do real damage to the Jack Smith indictment.
And interesting, I think, Trump, I think one of his best legacies is all the work that he's done with the courts and the appointments and everything else. And now, a lot of his fate seems to be lying with the Supreme Court. And
the liberal media is going berserk over it. In fact, I saw a comment, I think it was the Times, don't hold me to that, is calling for Thomas to recuse himself from any case that involves January 6th because his wife, on the basis that his wife was an active participant.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the chances are of that?
Zero.
None. Yeah. All right. You got your ethics thing. Leave us alone, right?
Exactly.
Okay. You found this article, and I think you're triggered by a recent purchase that I made.
Which one?
So I read this article. I thought it was a riot.
Not another selfie stick, Stephanie.
It's a ring light. It's a ring light.
And I loved the caption to it. I had to read it. It's how Meta's new face camera heralds a new age of surveillance. And this guy starts off, or lady starts off by saying, in the last 2 weeks, she's secretly been using a camera to film people, not letting them know that it's going on. And it's because she's wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses and secretly filming people. And if you're looking online right now, if you're watching a stream, Stephanie is secretly filming you with her Ray-Ban, her Meta Ray-Ban cameras.
And yeah, they have two cameras in the sides. But you guys, Mark and Hannah, you're always telling me that I take too many selfies, and I can't take a selfie with this. Now I'm just going to start taking pictures of you. So all that complaining, and now guess what you're going to get?
All you have to do is stand in front of a mirror and take a picture of yourself with your glasses.
I don't even know
you can take yourself. You don't even have to hold your camera to take a selfie now.
I think I got one. We're gonna post these on Facebook later. It makes a cool noise. Actually, the reason why I really like these, so I am a huge audio person. No, I'm serious. You guys know this. I like
selfies.
The real reason.
But if I show up to a party and I'm wearing these glasses,
Leave.
I could be secretly recording.
Or she's bucking to be Tom Cruise's fill-in stunt double on the next Mission Impossible movie, right?
Or Risky Business.
Sunglasses at night.
Right. They actually have clear ones, so you don't have to look like you're wearing your sunglasses inside. But I really, really enjoy walking, and I really enjoy audio. AirPods are okay. I don't love them. And actually, the glasses are, I think, cheaper than the latest version of AirPods. And they have audio in them. And so if you don't like things like sticking in your ear, and I think also from a safety perspective, a lot of the headphones now have noise canceling. And so if I'm walking on the street, I really don't like having noise canceling headphones in because I feel like it's unsafe. And when you're driving as well, I think people who drive with AirPods, you're not necessarily aware of your surroundings. And so wearing the glasses, they will play the Eagle app and the radio or whatever you want.
Okay, now we're talking about features I would actually use here. So
it's wonderful because you can listen to all your audio. You can still have a conversation with people. You can walk down the street and not feel like you're going to get hit by a car or attacked from behind. And so you can still interact. I feel like it's less rude, but I like walking outside. I travel a lot. So like, if I'm on the airplane or whatever, I've had the situation where the AirPod falls out and it's like lost in the airplane. These are perfect. I think they're great. So I have never intentionally taken a photo with these. I don't even know. I mean, I just tried, so we'll see. I don't know where they go.
So now Meta not only knows where your phone is because you have Facebook on your phone and it's tracking you constantly like every other app is, but now they can actually see what you're looking at and use that against you in their algorithms.
I'm sure it's fine.
And don't worry, the government will never see any of that information.
No.
Never.
I mean, if you're worried about this, then you're like, we are already. You have an Apple Watch. I mean, we're already fully like logged in, and we're already streaming on Facebook currently. So whatever picture I just took, Facebook
if you can
already
figure out how to use this, it'll.
I don't know. I love them for the audio features. I really do. If you have,
You look cool in them.
Oh, and they're cute. I mean, remember those old like Meta AI, like the Oculus, the other like things with cameras in them? They were huge and they were kind of ugly. They're a little bit thicker on the sides, but they're not
ugly.
Ugly.
The best things are, so.
Okay, let's move on. John, it's up to you next, and that would be all except for this.
Cold, straight from the can.
Are we doing a White Claw segment again? I like
Stay tuned. Well, the video has 3.5 million views. Even Campbell's Chunky weighed in and commented, "Alex, please." Some folks think eating cold canned soup can make you sick. Progressive stepped up, and they said their soups can be consumed cold, but whatever temperature you prefer. We agree with Alex that soup is elite, whatever that means. Heating up canned soup can enhance the flavors and help you stay warm, but it's apparently safe to eat right out of the can. Reminds me of my concrete crew coworker many moons ago, old Stu, who in the dead of summertime would eat Vienna sausages, room temperature from the can, and he'd always crack the can open and drink the juice first before he got to the Vienna sausages.
Reminds me of sea rations.
There you go. Sea rats, exactly. Yeah.
Do you know who Alex Earl is, John?
Yeah.
So I've got to tell you, John, and if folks were watching on the live video feed on the Wake Up in Missouri YouTube channel, you would have seen Stephanie and I make eye contact and just kind of laugh when you said the name Alex Earl, because I think we were just mutually impressed that you knew who Alex is.
She's the one who does all the different food weigh-ins and all on TikTok.
She's a big TikToker.
She does a lot on TikTok, but for those who don't know her, she's dating Miami Dolphins player Braxton Berrios.
Yeah.
She's having her own little T Swift moment.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Braxton Berrios matches up with Travis Kelce. Just for the record.
Certainly not. But she's super popular on TikTok. But yeah, I actually saw this on TikTok and the cold soup thing, and I can't get behind it.
I can't.
Family member who eats refrigerated pork and beans right out of the can.
I think cold baked beans is really good, honestly.
Nah, not there.
You're canceled.
Yeah.
Come on.
Things that are supposed to be hot should stay hot.
No, cold pizza, cold Chinese food.
No. Microwave your pizza.
Text
Steph asked Pops about cold sea rats in the field and see what he thinks of them.
573-874-9390. What do you eat cold that makes you weird? Definitely Chinese food.
I will say some people think that me drinking iced coffee all through the winter is weird.
That is weird. You're so Gen Z and canceled for that, for sure.
Yep.
But cold soup, that's another level.
Didn't we know somebody who used to live on progressive soup?
Yes, we do. Also, Alex Earl is not known for her excellent eating habits. She's thin as a rail, but she's constantly taking videos of herself ordering enough food for 30 people at
so
night.
Not fair.
And eating just trash.
So she eats 2 bites of each
and then falls asleep.
And the reason she gets away with that is because so many people pay on her TikTok feed or however she's monetizing it that she can literally go out and just waste people's money on that.
Apparently. I don't know. I think she just has a metabolism of a 22-year-old or something.
I think she's figured out a great scam. We should all figure that one out.
It's not a scam. Influencing is not a scam. She's actually pretty smart. I mean, I think she's
what about
capitalized on her.
Yeah. Well, what about what's his name from the Titans with the mayonnaise and the coffee and eating the bananas with the peels?
Will Levacy.
Yeah.
That's just gross.
That is hilarious. And I just saw something about mayonnaise. Did you see this on the New Heights podcast? Speaking of Travis Kelce and his brother, they get in a long debate about apparently Travis Kelce hates mayonnaise and Jason eats it on everything. Wow. And it was hilarious. And Travis asked Jason, so when you haven't sweat for a while and you sweat, is it just is mayonnaise just coming out of your pores? And the two of them talking about mayonnaise was hilarious.
See, I like mayonnaise, but that's disgusting.
Mayonnaise is gross.
Oh, Jason Kelce looks like a mayonnaise guy.
Corey says cold chicken. Yum. Cold chicken.
Cold chicken? That's not bad.
Like chicken salad or rotisserie chicken.
I've eaten cold fried chicken before.
But it's soggy.
Oh, about people eating cold, SpaghettiOs.
Yesterday, you can check out our websites, and there is more information there as well. A couple of state updates, Mark, since you and I have not been on Wake Up Mid-Mo, but we got an update on the lieutenant governor's race. Former Senator Bob Onder officially jumped in. We kind of knew that was coming.
Yeah, St. Charles County. I mean, I think after he gave himself $500,000 and his brother gave his PAC $500,000, that it seemed pretty obvious he was going to run.
And do you think it shakes anything up in that race? Who do you think it helps?
Oh boy, that's really a tough question. I think it probably helps Holly Rader more than anybody else. I think that probably puts her in a better position as the person that maybe benefits from it. But I don't know. I mean, I think that race is a tough race to handicap.
So we've got Dean Plocker, who has had his own set of issues, who is still the speaker, who is still in the race. We've got Holly Thompson Rader, and we've got Bob Onder, basically as the three main candidates. There are some others in there. But
I mean, it does sound like, depending on how things shake out, he probably has a fairly decent shot in a primary.
Bob Onder does?
Bob Onder does, yeah. I mean, I just think he picks a wing that I'm not sure Holly Rader or Dean Plocker really cover in that primary, which is the very far conservative wing of the party.
And I think he's probably part of this new group, although he's not pictured on Twitter with them. But I know he's had a very busy schedule since his announcement. But yesterday I saw that the Missouri former, what was their old name?
Conservative Caucus is now the Freedom Caucus.
Well, they were the Conservative Caucus. Then they were the caucus formerly known as the Conservative Caucus, because they still
Chaos Caucus
stuck together. But they've rebranded even like their Twitter and everything else. And they took a photo yesterday of a lot of them hanging out. Now, yes, they're Missouri Freedom Caucus. Now, this is something slightly different because there is a National Freedom Caucus, and
Correct.
They've tagged this SFC network, which is the State Freedom Caucus Network. So I guess these folks are going state to state and helping them set up these uber conservative caucuses.
And they do some vetting. It's really interesting because, so he's not in the picture, Mike Moon, because the SFCC refused to allow him to be a member of it because of some of the things he's posted in the past. They actually do some vetting. Yeah.
I thought these, and these are the people that are kind of pro-vetting, right, in the state?
Yeah, I think they're the ones that are in for the county commission or the county committee vetting. I think they all generally support that. The other thing that's interesting, at least as reported, is that in some way, shape, or form, Tim Jones is going to be involved in it.
Yeah, he's in the photo, and I see others that are familiar to our audience: Bill Eigel, Nick Schroer, Rick Bratton, Maisie Boyd, who is now Maisie Christensen. Yeah, and then who else is in here? Oh, Denny Hoskins and Andrew Koenig. So a lot of players in Missouri saying, and then I assume not everyone is pictured. So I assume this will shape up. But how that affects the Senate going forward, knowing that I think someone posted like the gang's back together. It's going to be an interesting year.
It's another dysfunctional Senate. The other thing that's interesting is you've got Eigel running for governor in the caucus. Clearly Onder, if he's not, he may not be in it because he's not a legislator. He's clearly affiliated with it. Running for lieutenant governor, you got Hoskins running for secretary of state. You got Koenig running for state treasurer. You've got basically a statewide Freedom Caucus ticket.
Slate. Yeah, interesting.
So nothing will get accomplished in the Senate, is what you're saying in 2024.
Even if they weren't running, I'm not sure they would anyway. I mean, it's just with everything going on. But I do think I saw the photo as well. Hoskins represents Cooper County, which is, used to be Caleb Rowden's district, and he still has Boone, but Hoskins has that. But it is interesting. I thought that's a sizable chunk, even without Mike Moon in it. That is, that could pose some issues if Caleb Rowden is trying to form some coalitions or stuff. So it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think more of the same. Well, we want to welcome into the show Casey Muckler with the Department of Mental Health. Some really positive news coming out of Missouri on this 988 line. I think the headline was Missouri has the best response times. Casey, welcome into the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Tell us more about these response times and how you've been able to accomplish that.
Yeah, so I would say we just worked very early on before 988 officially launched at the national level to really make sure that we had our ducks in a row, make sure we had the funding that we needed, really work with the providers that are answering those calls and texts and chats to make sure that they had everything that they needed to be successful in answering those calls. And then we've done a ton of promotion of 988 since it launched. really making sure that we are getting as many calls as possible because we want to reach as many people as possible that are in crisis and need help.
Can you tell us any actual numbers? Like what type of volume of calls are we talking about?
Yeah, so I can tell you in October, we had about 5,000 calls in October that were answered here in Missouri, which is pretty high call volume when you compare it to the census data and you think about the number of calls that are coming into other states. So we're getting quite a bit of call volume that we anticipated and are working to really make sure that number is out there. And then we answered about 94% of those calls locally here in Missouri. So most of those folks are staying right here in Missouri, getting connected to a local crisis specialist that can help them.
So the 988 is well known, I think, on a national level, is kind of a suicide prevention line, but there's more to it than just suicide prevention. Can you talk a little bit about the other side of that, the kind of the crisis intervention?
Of course, yeah. So 988 was built on the historic suicide prevention lifeline, but it really is for anybody experiencing any type of mental health or substance use crisis or anybody that's really just needing to reach out for some sort of emotional support. So we always say that our crisis specialists don't define what a crisis looks like to somebody else. Whatever it is that they're feeling and they need to talk about it, we encourage them to reach out to us. So it's really for mental health support, but it's also for substance use crisis. So if somebody is going through a hard time and really just needs to talk about ways in which they can keep themselves safe and receive that local support, that's what 988 is really for.
Which division does that operate out of? I know the Department of Mental Health has 3 divisions. You've got Division of Behavioral Health. You've got the Developmental Disabilities. I don't think it's that one. And then the Division of Administrative Services. Which one would that be in? And I'm just curious as far as FTE and how many folks, because I can't think of anything more important that you folks do than this.
Yeah. So it is actually operated and, overseen by the Division of Behavioral Health, but we're really trying to integrate 988 into all other state departments too. So we're working on plans to connect with each state department to make sure that they're also helping us spread the message of 988 because there are so many people who still don't know about it.
Now, when you talked about the line, clearly we've heard about the response times, and that was something you've been praised for is quick response times. And then you also mentioned the calls being answered locally. It sounds like those two things, maybe the data bears that out. If you can talk to someone quickly and you can talk to someone locally, that it's helpful. Are there other? I mean, is that why those two things are highlighted as important? And then what else in getting people to the right resources or what they need? What else is important in that calculus?
Absolutely. So I would say the number of calls coming in is significant to us. Our in-state answer rate, that 94% that I gave you, is important to us. And then the average speed in which we're answering these calls is also very important to us. We know that in October, we answered all of our calls, all of those 5,000 calls, in about 14 seconds on average, which is a really quick response time and getting connected because we know that when folks are reaching out in crisis, every second counts and we need to connect to them as quickly as possible.
And Brian kind of asked...
I would say...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Brian kind of asked about FTEs too, and so that was my question was just, when you say answering, did you RFP that out to, are there other, is it in-house state people or is that a third parties that are answering those calls?
Yeah, so it's actually... we actually have 7 988 centers across Missouri, and these are the centers that have historically answered the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and they're also our behavioral health providers here in Missouri. So we worked very early on to connect with all of these centers, really work with them to plan the infrastructure that it was going to look like in Missouri, and then roll this out. So it's not necessarily state folks answering these calls. It's trained crisis specialists at behavioral health providers that are answering all of these calls, texts, and chats.
You are hearing Casey Muckler. She is with the Department of Mental Health.
Talk to us about the whole angle of those people out there, Casey, who might call 988 as opposed to calling 911, but they still have fears, I'll bet, that, if I call about this, the cops are going to show up at my house, or worst case scenario, I'll be forced into a non-voluntary mental health commitment. Yeah, those are absolute real fears because I know that there are
there are folks out there who have had that situation happen to them. And I will just say to that, our goal is really to keep people safe in their communities. We really want to connect with individuals when they're at a point in their crisis that they don't necessarily need to go to the hospital and they don't need law enforcement involvement. The earlier we can connect with folks, the better, because then we can talk to them about what they're experiencing and keep them safe in their community, and then connect them to the resources that they ultimately need to be connected to.
Now, we've talked to some other folks about the holiday blues. Do you track? Obviously, you're tracking those calls. Do you expect an uptick throughout December and maybe into January as the weather gets cold and it gets darker and people are, we get into the holiday season?
Yeah, so a lot of people believe that there may be a spike due around the holidays, but actually what we know from suicide data is that it's actually the opposite. The holidays kind of act as a protective factor for a lot of folks. Obviously not everybody, but a lot of times being around family and being in the holiday time frame is kind of a protective factor for folks. And so we don't typically see an uptick in volume around the holidays. Most of the time with suicide data, we worry about the springtime. That's typically known as more of a time when suicide rates are a little bit on the rise.
Interesting. I don't think I knew that. Well, we certainly appreciate all the work that you're doing in helping spread the word about this, and in those response times. I think speaking personally, my life has been affected by suicide, and there are people that I certainly wish were still here and that had somebody a call away, and so we really appreciate all the work you are doing and the department's doing and your centers are doing. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me and spreading the word about 988. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Casey. All right. Coming up next, we have the Morning Bell by Mark Ellinger with a twist. It's time for the Morning Bell this morning with Mark Ellinger and the twist that only Mark can give you.
All right. The market is big time up
Booming.
again. Futures are up across the board. Yesterday, as you may know, set a new record, 37,000. It's never been there before. Looks like they're going to shatter that one today. Mostly, I think in part, yesterday it was because of the announcement that there'll be 3 rate cuts by the Fed, which was huge news after all the rate increases. The market was been waiting for the Fed to make some indication that maybe those rates will come back down and put more money in the market. That's occurred. So that set off yesterday's rally. This morning, early, things were kind of up a little bit, but flat. And then the retail sales report came out about almost exactly an hour ago. And this is the November retail sales report. They call it the holiday sales report.
Because most people have completed their shopping by now. I'm not going to name any names. But
or at least they've started their shopping by now. And it includes Black Friday and all those events that we're all familiar with. So analysts expected that maybe it would be down a little bit, particularly compared to last November. Instead, up big. Retail spending is up big. I don't think anybody expected that. Frankly, I think there were a lot of pessimists out there who thought that they might be way down. So they're up 0.3% compared to October, but it's up 4% overall from a year ago.
Now, do you think
so sales in November outpaced inflation based upon the November before, to get an idea.
Do you think that people are just putting that on credit cards or doing that, like, what is that thing, Hannah, Afterpay, where you can, like, spread it out in 4 payments that your generation loves to do, like current layaway or whatever?
So there is a concern that credit card debt is continuing to increase, and the personal spending rate, personal saving rate, which is the rate at which people put money aside, is declining. Mm-hmm. So basically, what I think it tells us is the American consumer is not done spending, but they're not having as much money as they used to have, which means it will eventually catch up to them.
Yeah,
and it'll catch up to the economy.
Well, and it's especially dangerous for young people who are learning how to rack up the credit card debt or, pay things over time. I mean, that's a scary situation.
For the record, Stephanie, I only used Afterpay for 2 purchases for Christmas.
I haven't used it for any, but no, I get. I mean, I think if I had that option at your age, I would. But I think
actually
a lot of
it was
people.
3, I think.
Well, and I think a lot of people, like, you think Christmas, you're like YOLO, like whatever, like it. You got to make people happy, and then you get that bill in January, and you realize, oh my gosh, I spent more than. I mean, I've been in that situation where you get in January, and you're like, wow, I kind of went crazy there, and you can't take it back.
Well, and it stinks too. Like at my age, I want to give gifts to more of my family. And so trying to do that in a way that doesn't completely break us, it's been an interesting balancing act.
Well, and there's a new trend out there that may have impact, particularly upon a lot of younger people.
Oh, yeah.
And, do you recall, as we came out of COVID, everybody was really generously tipping at bars and restaurants. I mean, I think you felt like you were coming back. It's nice that they're here, and it's nice that they're serving. And then the next thing you know, you go to McDonald's, they want to know if you want a tip. And then it's the dry cleaner wants to know
Lindsey Lopez of the Food Bank for an updated grand total from yesterday's food drive, and that will happen at 8:50. But for now, so we're bumping leftovers up just a little bit. Speaking of something else that was taken, I think this has taken longer than they anticipated, didn't it, Mark? So 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed the PDMP program. If you recall, that was a big deal with Holly Thompson Rader, who's now running for lieutenant governor. Missouri is the last state to join the PDMP ranks. I know a lot of probably Wake Up Mid-Missouri listeners were not on board with that. I still have serious reservations about this.
Well, and she was just on the show Tuesday with guest fill-in Randy Tobler, and he kind of had an interesting perspective on it. You know, since he is a doctor and a provider, like he was able to give kind of that unique perspective that we hadn't heard on this station before. So
I don't want the government to have my medical info.
There was a lot of opposition to it, and it was really kind of jammed through to a certain extent, almost entirely on the basis that we were the last state.
And the whole other side of it was, St. Louis County early on did their own PDMP. And then what was it? Like half the counties in the state jumped on that one. So in effect, I know Cole County for sure, it's been on the books long before the state law did.
And it's like all these good ideas, they're good ideas. Like we should do something to try to work against opioid abuse. But in the end, it's just one more example of how the government gets more of your data, more of your information, and you lose control over yourself.
And if you know how many government agencies have been hacked and all of that, they can tell you that it's safe, but what we found out is nothing is really safe. Anyway, 2 years after the General Assembly passed PDMP, I think yesterday was the official system goes live date. So if you were worried about it, it's a done deal now, right?
And it was an issue that had been discussed, and quite frankly, it always would pass when Holly Rader was a member of the House. It would pass the House pretty easily, Republican and Democratic support. Senator Rob Schaaf, a former senator, Mark remembers him from St. Joseph. He had the very concerns that Mark is citing, and he bottled it up for years. People thought when he left that it would automatically pass, and it really did not. There was still a lot of opposition to it. I think what sticks out to me the most about the PDMP is it took 2 years, as you mentioned, to get that into effect, this database. But basically, the PDMP is a database that collects data on controlled substance prescriptions within a state. That's really what it is in a nutshell.
I'd be interested to know if this was one of the issues that they vetted for that Missouri Freedom Caucus. How many of those Missouri Freedom Caucus people you think voted for PDMP? Any of them?
I was in the with. Go ahead, Mark.
I would guess most of them voted against it. If I just had to kind of speculate, I mean, Schaaf was a doctor too.
Yes, he was.
People forget that.
Schroer definitely was a no vote. Who else is in? I don't have the picture right.
Hoskins, Bratton.
Yeah, Bratton. I don't remember. Well, Bratton, I wouldn't have. Yes, he was a no vote.
Eigel,
I was covering the House at the time, but I think he had privacy concerns.
Onder,
I believe, was a no vote.
Brian, remember in the House, one of the guys won the local Mid-Missouri state representative who was vehemently opposed to PDMP going on the books because of the privacy angles was then Representative Jay Barnes from Jefferson City.
Jay Barnes absolutely had those concerns, and he and Holly Rader were good friends. They just disagreed. And Keith Frederick, who was also a doctor at the time. So the Republicans were somewhat divided. The governor at the time really didn't have a strong, my sense, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he had a real strong opinion one way or the other. But
he was busy with other things.
Yeah, but Governor Parson, this was a priority for the Missouri Farm Bureau, and once the Farm Bureau said they want this done, it kind of got done. But that's kind of where we are right now.
John, what's in your leftovers?
Well, if you're in Kansas City over the holidays, there's a new attraction. I don't know if you heard about this. The KC Wheel is now up and running at Penway Point. It's open from noon to 10 each day. It's the same folks who put up the St. Louis Wheel at Union Station. So it's kind of like the where Mark said it, the London Eye.
Right? There you go.
I'm not a heights girl. I can't. Ferris wheels freak me out. All right. Brian, any updates on this? We've gotten a couple texts on the roll cart meeting tonight. We might as well.
Yeah, the roll cart meeting that I want to emphasize, it is not going to be a vote or anything like that. This is an open house style meeting. Come and go as you please. but important. It's a chance for you to give, basically, as I said in my copy, your 2 cents worth. You can show up anytime between 5 and 7 this evening. And here's the thing. They passed this roll cart ordinance, but they did not specify where the cart should be stored outside of the time frame. What the ordinance says is this, one sentence. So they can be placed at the curb no earlier than 4 the day before the scheduled collection day and must be removed from the curb no later than 10 p.m. on that collection day. Couple things. Number one, it doesn't specify where they're, and I know this is an issue with the city. They're trying to figure that out, where they should be stored outside of that time frame, other that must be on private property, and then who enforces it. So I know a lot of people have questions.
They'll put a parking boot on the wheel of your roll cart if it's on the curb too long.
I understand, but it's from 5 to 7 this evening. So that's called me solid waste, and come and go as you please. I did check. I don't think DeCarlin Seawood will be there, but solid waste will. DeCarlin Seawood being the city manager. It is important because we're only a couple of months away. But if roll carts are coming, but they got to figure that out. That's something they've just got to get figured out.
How do they? That ordinance just doesn't make sense to me from this perspective. What if you have to work at nights? How do you get your cart in off the street if you're working at night? I mean, you're now being punished because you work in an evening type of economy gig.
And that is how the law. No, I understand you. That, and Mark, you bring up a good point, and that is how the ordinance reads. And I don't see an exception. I've read the copy, and unless I'm missing something, I don't think so. Has to be. And again, the enforcement's a big thing. Is somebody going to be going out driving around in a trash truck at 10 o'clock at night to see if the
No, it's going to be like the
chalk mark.
They're going to have the trolleys do it.
No, it's going to be like Karen's neighbors calling in on their neighbors, being like, "I don't like the look of that blue trash can on the street. It ruins the."
You had too many people at your barbecue during the
pandemic.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's who's.
The one thing about the roll carts, and I remember being at one meeting, and I remember Hannah laughed about it because this is what the person said. Literally, they said to them, talking about roll carts, this was bigger than guns and abortion, bigger than Trump or Biden, these roll carts. And I'm telling you, there are people in this town that are single issue voters, but it's really, it's weird. It's not ideological. Dan Vietz, the marijuana activist, hates roll carts. And yet you have some staunch conservatives too. So it's not. I don't think it's definitely not liberal conservative. It's just I don't know how to describe it. It's just
Mark. It takes us back to the
burn ban.
Remember the debate in Jefferson City over roll carts when they first went with the two stream, one roll cart for trash and one for recycling, and people were just up in arms in the whole mandatory angle, and they got over it.
And the burn ban, too.
And I didn't love the idea of the single stream recycling. And then once I had it, I'm sad now that I don't have it in Ashland. But we've had roll carts. I mean, Columbia, it's time they just get with the picture. Mark, what's in your leftovers?
So y'all morning people, I'm not a morning person. So, I sacrifice my mornings to come in sometimes.
And we appreciate it.
If you're a morning person, you should maybe thank the Neanderthals. And the fact that you must be related to them in some way, shape, or form, because the studies now show that the people that are morning people tend to have certain genetic markers that come from Neanderthals, which I thought was actually kind of interesting in and of itself. The other thing is Neanderthals gave us some other stuff. If you, it's not just sleeping, their sleep schedule, but you have increased tolerance to low oxygen at high altitudes. So if you ski and you don't get altitude sickness, that may be because you have some relation to the Neanderthals. You have a greater risk for severe COVID. Oh. They found that now that a lot of people that are long COVID have had it also. So it's interesting to see that a deceased predecessor in our hierarchy is now come back.
So now, like when employees sleep in, they just can say like, "Oh, I just have bad genes. I'm not a morning person." That seems like a way out.
Or you could say, "I'm not a Neanderthal."
Yeah. All right. Well, we have got to take a quick break here because we are going to be getting the updated total from Lindsey Lopez of the Food Bank coming up next. yesterday with the 1-for-1 holiday food drive with Commerce Bank. Now, Lindsey, we have been playing some audio from last night with the preliminary totals from yesterday, but you're here this morning, Lindsey Lopez of the Food Bank, to give us the updated total, perhaps?
It was an incredible day yesterday because of the generosity of this community. We have raised over $56,000 for our neighbors in need. Just an amazing effort.
That is wonderful. And so if you missed out yesterday and you want to donate, you can still get on our website, either on KWOS or 93.9 The Eagle. There's a link there. You can text food to 573-874-9390, and we can provide you more information. Tell us about what those dollars are going to be doing.
So that will help us to provide food and resources for neighbors in need throughout the holiday season and well into the new year. Here we are in the spirit of the holidays and of giving and generosity. And the truth is that hunger knows no season, and need will continue into the new year. It will continue for years to come. We don't see that going away, but every dollar that came in yesterday will go a long way toward helping those in need.
Well, and I know one of the programs that I really enjoy is the Buddy Pack program. And I know during COVID, with a lot of the federal rules, we were doing breakfast and lunch for free, and now that's gone away. And so, the worst thing you can see is a hungry child. That's exactly right. Our costs are 3 times what they were pre-COVID. That's our new normal. The number of people who are in need, including children, continues to climb. The USDA came out with a report, 2022 numbers, but the report just came out that showed that 44 million Americans are considered food insecure, and 13 million of them are children. Hunger is real. It is prevalent right here in this community, throughout the state of Missouri and throughout the country.
So, folks here, obviously in mid-Missouri, how can they get more involved? I mean, it's not just donating money, although that goes so far because you can maximize the dollars. What else can folks do?
Volunteer for us. We need volunteers, and I'm glad you asked. I'll put that plea out. As school is not in session, we see our volunteer numbers decline. We need your help. We've got the brand new food bank market that is open on the business loop. We need volunteers there, definitely. If you are interested in that experience of being right there to serve those neighbors who are in need and help us to distribute food, you can do that. We need help at mobile pantry distributions with events as well. And then, of course, advocate for us. If you hear anything that resonates with you about hunger in the communities we serve, please just help tell the story about the work that we do.
Lindsey, I know you've talked to us so many times in the past, and especially about in recent years, where you used to get a lot of donations from a lot of factories, and I know nationally some of those corporate donations are down, and the decrease in the commodities from the feds is down too, and it makes it just that much tougher on the food bank, doesn't it?
You're exactly right. So the way that the food banks traditionally acquire food has changed dramatically. All manufacturers and retailers are creating new efficiencies, and it's really reduced dramatically the amount of food that we're able to get through those traditional channels. We've had to become much more creative. We've had to definitely increase our revenue-seeking efforts, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a challenging time, but we are committed, and we are committed to the better quality foods, and we will do everything we can to ensure that the neighbors who need our services continue to receive them.
Let's talk more about the food bank market. You brought that up briefly, but for those who haven't, it's kind of a newer project. You mentioned you needed volunteers. What goes on there, and what type of staffing does it require?
So of the 200 food banks nationwide, 6 in the state of Missouri, only about 25% of us own and operate and staff our own pantry. In this case, we have rebranded the former Central Pantry that we operated for over a decade on Big Bear Boulevard as the Food Bank Market in this new space that we opened on the Business Loop November 1st. So that space is serving over 10,000 Boone County residents every month. In the month of November, in fact, we served over 11,300 individuals. So I think it just really speaks to the kind of need that is out there, neighbors who are just struggling, trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we've been, really big on here is, while a lot of people want, government support, and I get that, you get funding from various sources, it's really about the community coming together and helping neighbor to neighbor. And here, how it's just incredible how generous the Mid-Missouri has been, and, how many other community partners you all have that help you with helping folks in need.
That's exactly right. And I think that there is this perception by some that there's a certain type of person who receives services from us. And the truth is, it could be any one of us that finds ourselves in need. A divorce, a job loss, a medical diagnosis, just some situation that changes your path moving forward. And you find yourself really struggling and need access to food. And in fact, even some of the Zimmer on-air personalities have shared both personally and publicly that they have used our services before. So if there's one takeaway for listeners today, it's just any one of us could find ourselves in that line.
Certainly.
Food Bank obviously has such a big footprint here in Boone County and Columbia, but what about in the surrounding counties? How do you get food out to folks in the rural areas that maybe have transportation issues or just aren't able to come into Columbia to pick up food?
Yeah, great question. So we cover 32 counties, roughly a third of the state of Missouri, almost 19,000 square miles, so a really big footprint. Boone County is the most populous county that we serve, so we are going into some very rural communities where the need is tremendously high and where sometimes a bricks and mortar option is not even possible. We operate a fleet of vehicles that are out there actively delivering food to our partner agencies and schools. We also operate 22 mobile pantries per month. So especially in those rural communities where there is not a bricks and mortar option, we can take 10 to 12,000 pounds of largely the perishable foods, the more nutritious foods, and distribute that out to families in need. So we're constantly looking at that footprint, looking at where the need is, figuring out how we can be creative and adaptable to meet those needs.
It's just incredible. Well, again, if you want to donate to the food bank through the food drive, you can visit our websites, either 93.9 The Eagle or KWOS. And then if you want to get involved with the food bank directly and find them, where can people go?
Yes, please go to our website. It's sharefoodbringhope.org.
Thank you again for joining us, Lindsey, and for all of your efforts.
Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Well, coming up tomorrow on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we are going to have Trey Fauché. He has been very involved with Mizzou College Republicans. I always love getting the young folks' take now that I am an older lady. And